What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Thursday. Welcome back to another edition of the Transfer View. How is everybody doing? I think everyone's probably back at work now. New Year's kind of done and everybody's just kind of getting back into the swing of things. Wow, strap in, buckle up and all that kind of stuff, because there is so much to get into this morning when it comes to transfer news, managerial news, ownership, acquisition news in the world of Manchester United. Certainly, we have got so much to get into. We've got some really interesting reports regarding Erik ten Hag, and INEOS, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. We know that Jim Ratcliffe was at Old Trafford yesterday having meeting officially in an official capacity with Erik ten Hag for the first time. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that, but also a really interesting article coming from Rob Dawson from ESPN talking about how possibly friction could be on the horizon between Ten Hag and INEOS, particularly when it comes to recruitment. And also, I think probably the biggest story kind of buried in this article was the revelation, whether or not you believe it to be true is another situation, but the revelation possibly that INEOS have already informally sounded out Graham Potter for what his future plans could be, possibly lining him up to take over from Erik ten Hag, possibly at the end of the season. So much to get into when it comes to that. A big update about Jaden Sancho this morning. A lot of reports coming out from Germany. That's actually why I was a couple of minutes late, because there was just another report basically saying that it's a done deal, and we're just really waiting for the here we go from Fabrizio Romano really about that. Going to be talking about Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There's so much talk about his contract. We're in the time in which contracts are being triggered to be extended for another year. Victor Lindelof has been triggered. Rafael Varane, Anthony Martial, they have not. Aaron Wan-Bissaka joins the group along with Lindelof, that his contract has been extended, so we'll be chatting a bit about that. An update also about Andre Onana and AFCON. So many people were wondering what's going on with AFCON and Andre Onana. Why isn't he just going with Cameroon? Well, a compromise has been met, and it's a bit of a strange one as well. And in addition to that, we've got some positive news when it comes to Lisandro Martinez and Casemiro. As you can just see there, jam-packed show certainly. So how's everybody doing? Be sure to click the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. I'm just looking into the chat, seeing what everyone's saying. Kristen, big up Kristen, saying, morning all. Mr. Fresh is feeling fresh and says morning everyone as well. Mr. Leo G says, no, I'm watching Flex. Well, that's why it's a solo Owen view this morning, because Fleck is on Sky Sports. Yes, he's on Sky on the morning transfer show today and tomorrow, and I think that's the case for this whole transfer window, really. So big up Flex, as always, representing UV on Sky Sports. Exciting stuff, exciting times. UV is everywhere. UV is everywhere. I mean, not like ultraviolet rays, because they are everywhere, even on a cloudy day. That's why they sometimes say, when you go outside and it doesn't look like the sun's out, still put some SPF on, because it can be dangerous, especially for a fair person like me. I mean, I got sunburnt on a cloudy day outside Wembley last year, so be protected. Yeah, little lesson for everyone in the morning. Always wear protection. Not like that. Let's move on. Let's talk about INEOS and Erik ten Hag and Graham Potter. This is a really interesting article. It was written by Rob Dawson from ESPN, and the headline of the article was, can Ten Hag convince Ratcliffe and co that he's the man for Man United? Now, it was really sort of documenting really the turbulent time that Erik ten Hag has had at Manchester United in terms of a lot of the issues when it comes to Cristiano Ronaldo, Jaden Sancho, David De Gea, all of the stuff regarding, Anthony, Mason Greenwood, just a lot of ups and downs certainly that he's had, and also the successes that he's had as well, winning the Carabao Cup, finishing third in the league, getting to the FA Cup final, and also this season being a really difficult season, and basically what INEOS's thought process was really like and what their sort of feelings were towards Erik ten Hag at the moment. And some really interesting things that kind of stood out to me, we can get them up on the screen right now, was this first part here saying, quote, sources have told ESPN that Ten Hag is reluctant to give up any power in the new structure, especially his major role in the identification of transfer targets. He's guaranteed a veto on all transfer decisions under the terms of his contract, but his influence has extended beyond that, leading to United signing a number of his former players or those with links to Holland. And we'll get into some of the ones that have not worked out, certainly. But if you're wondering, well, what does this mean when it comes to Erik ten Hag and his future. Are INEOS going to get rid of him? Are they considering getting rid of him? What are their feelings towards the Manchester United manager at the moment? This next part is possibly the biggest and most key aspect of it. It says, sources have told ESPN that INEOS' preference is to keep Ten Hag until at least the end of the season, although there's an acceptance that more poor results may force it to act sooner. Graham Potter, who was approached by INEOS to take over at its French club OGC Nice in the summer, has been informally sounded out about his plans for the future, and Blanc, that being Jean-Claude Blanc, the new CEO, hasn't been confirmed yet, has been inundated with calls from agents pushing the claims of their clients. So two really big things coming out of that article. One being is that regardless of what this new structure looks like, and there will be a new structure at Manchester United with INEOS taking over football operations. We know that, I think it was reported yesterday from, is it Craig Hope? I think it is, from the Daily Mail, was saying that basically the reason Newcastle haven't come out to really dispel any of this speculation linking Dan Ashworth with the move to Manchester United from Newcastle is because there's probably quite a lot of weight to it. So that one, and certainly within the game, reportedly, there is a sort of general acceptance that that one could actually happen. So you could have Dan Ashworth being sort of a sporting director. There have been links with Paul Mitchell to become the sort of head of recruitment to really spearhead Manchester United's recruitment directly. And that means that there's going to probably be a lot of delegation, and Erik ten Hag, or whoever the manager is at Manchester United, possibly won't have that huge influence in recruitment like they would have had previously. They'll always have a say, and they'll always have a wish list, and they'll always collaborate, but it might not be, or certainly whoever's in the hot seat might not be as heavy-handed with recruitment as Erik ten Hag has been. Now, the problem is, I suppose, with that, if this report is accurate, and it must be said, you always have to take every article with a pinch of salt. Can you believe everything you read? Absolutely, certainly not. We have seen this season certain journalists have axes to grind, and I think it's quite curious that I think it was... I can't remember who. It might have been United People's TV. Shout out to them, who posted after the game against Forest, I think it was, the difference in reporting between two outlets over one comment by Erik ten Hag, and it was about the decision to take Kobbie Mainoo off for Scott McTominay. And his quote was more, Kobbie Mainoo's played 2 games in a short period of time. His energy levels were low. We're trying to protect him, sort of thing. I have no regrets about that decision. And I saw Carl Anker from The Athletic basically did the whole quote and said this was the reason why. And then Samuel Lutkers basically was like, he said it was tactical. He has no regrets. And you're going, well, you're kind of just lifting and removing any semblance of context from that one, aren't you? And he got the reaction that he was looking for, Samuel Lutkers, when he said that, because people were vying for Erik ten Hag's blood after that, calling him inept, an idiot, a bold fraud, you name it. So you always have to have media literacy whenever you read anything or whether you try and dissect anything. Certainly that's what we try and do here. So take it for what it's worth. It did come from someone that was banned from a press conference earlier on. But if part of it is true, particularly the point when it comes to the terms of Ten Hag's contract, that he's guaranteed a veto on all transfer decisions under the terms of his current existing Manchester United contract, that's pretty significant, because that just might not vibe with what INEOS wants. That might just not vibe with what INEOS, their vision is of their recruitment policy. Because if you've got a situation, they might be coming in being like, we want everyone to be singing off the same hymn sheet. We want everyone to be aligned on our transfer targets. Paul Mitchell might, identify this player. Boom. We want this guy. We're going to go for this guy. What if Ten Hag just goes, no, I don't want that. And he's right to, because he's got that in his contract. That becomes a bit of a friction point between all parties, and that might be a problem moving forward. Now, there could be a situation where, on the flip side of things, that these people come in, Ashworth, Mitchell, Jean-Claude Blanc, and they're all completely aligned with Ten Hag. They start recommending these people, and Ten Hag's like, brilliant. That's the people that I want. Yes, Elise was a name that was linked yesterday for the summer. Yeah, I like Elise. Let's go get him. So it might not be that kind of prickly, as it were, anyway. But it could be a problem. That could be an issue. And it must be stressed, and they do state this in the article too, that it's kind of beyond just a veto power. We've seen the players that Erik ten Hag has identified, and a lot of them do have links to either he's worked with them before or they have played in the Netherlands or anything like that. In fact, in the article, it says this when it comes to Antony, pretty scathing review or indictment of Antony. It says there are particularly questions about Antony, a player Ten Hag pushed for after working with him at Ajax from 2020 to 2022, but has since done little to justify the huge £85 million transfer fee. A mediocre player signed for big money and handed a long deal on massive wages is exactly the type of thing INEOS want to avoid. And obviously, when it comes to all of this, parallels are then drawn between the takeover of Chelsea by Todd Boehly and how Thomas Tuchel, who was a Champions League winner in 2021 with the club, was sacked by Chelsea in September of 2022 after working with the new owner Todd Boehly for just 100 days. And Thomas Tuchel reportedly saw Boehly's demand for more engagement with club bosses as an unnecessary interference, while there were also disagreements over other signings at the club during that period of time as well. Of course, the irony is, who did Chelsea turn to after sacking Thomas Tuchel? Graham Potter. And we saw exactly how that turned out at the time, didn't we? Not very well. So there could be friction certainly on the horizon when it comes to that. But really, I guess the biggest and most, for me, the most alarming talking point coming out of all of that is that news there, whether or not it's accurate, it does feel to me that there is something to it, because the links are still coming from all of these different outlets at the moment, is that INEOS, they're saying informally, have sounded out Graham Potter. Now, they do stress in this, and this is kind of, you know me, I've said this on a million different shows at this point, this is the direction that I think it's going anyway. I don't think Erik ten Hag goes anywhere until the end of the season, unless things get horrifically bad. And this was something that Flex and myself discussed the other day on the Transfer View, which was, what is the tipping point for INEOS? What is the sort of smash glass in case of emergency moment? Is it dropping into the bottom half, for instance? And look, that could happen within the next 6 weeks or so, maybe even sooner than that. If Man United drop into the bottom half in the second half of the season, which is where we're at the moment, maybe that will be enough for INEOS just to be like, we're going to have to accelerate these plans, or we're going to have to do something drastic, and we're going to have to do something, quick. Maybe it's not even our sort of finalised full long-term plans. We might have to go down an interim route because this is getting just, the rot has to be stopped. But the sort of preference is to keep Ten Hag till the end of the season, which is the way I always thought it was going to go. I mean, I've said this so many times in recent weeks, is that I don't think, unless things get terribly bad, they'll get rid of Erik ten Hag tomorrow, because in terms of logic and strategy, that's not the right thing to do. The logical thing to do and the right thing to do, and I think the positive thing to do, is to put everything in place first before you decide whether or not you want to make that decision. You get your CEO in, you get your sporting director in, you get your head of recruitment in, you overhaul and you audit all of these departments that you're going to overhaul and audit, whether it is recruitment, whether it is medical, whether it's whatever it may be in the club. You assess all of these single points of failure within Manchester United, and you try and correct them step by step first. You don't try and skip steps. You don't try and run before you can walk or anything like that. And that's what INEOS have to do. Now, because of that, we might find ourselves, and certainly Erik ten Hag might find himself, in a situation where in a month's time, 2 months' time, we all might know Erik ten Hag's future, but it just hasn't happened yet. A bit like at Chelsea in times gone by as well. There have been managers, head coaches, whatever you want to call them, at Chelsea in the past. I think of Sarri. I think of Antonio Conte at points. I think of Rafa Benitez was there on an interim basis, where you all know what's going to happen regarding his future, but you just have to wait to the end of the season. I think that Erik ten Hag could find himself in that situation. I think Erik ten Hag could find himself in a situation where we all know he's probably going to go at the end of the season. He's probably going to be let go. And maybe the links, I'm not saying it's necessarily with Graham Potter. I hope it's not Graham Potter. I would hope if they decide to go down that route, it's someone else, someone that you can get excited about, because I can't get excited about Graham Potter at all. But it could go down a direction where those links get bigger, those chats become less informal, shall we say, and then suddenly it's a case of, we all know he's going to go at the end of the season, and this guy's coming in, and then whenever it is announced, you have to pretend to be shocked. And you could find yourself with a bit of a lame duck manager, where the season kind of peters out, the press conferences, the interviews, I'm fully focused, I'm doing this, a bit like with Ralf Rangnick. You know, when Ralf was in charge and it was like, I'm going to be this consultancy role. Because remember when Rangnick was at the club and really towards the end, his last few games, and he was doing these press conferences, people started to ask him, so about this consultancy role, Ralf, like, have you sort of thrashed out and fleshed out what that really looks like? Have you really looked at those sort of details? Have you spoken to John Murtaugh? Have you spoken to any of the Glazer family about what that kind of looks like? And he kept saying, no, I haven't yet. We're just sort of getting through the season, and then I'm sure we'll have a chat at the end of the season. And then as time rolled on, and then Erik ten Hag was announced that he was coming in at the end of the season, they were like, have you spoken to Erik? Have you spoken to John? Have you spoken to the owners about how you're going to work with Erik? No, I mean, we've had a phone call, a couple of texts here and there, but I'm sure we'll have a chat at the end of the season. And then it became pretty obvious that he was going to go, and it was just about working it out. Next thing you know, Austria have come in for Rangnick, and he's gone. And it could... I feel like that could be a situation. And, you know, I said before, like, for me, I'm in the camp of rip it all down. So I'm not opposed to, as part of this whole thing of getting rid of the CEO, getting rid of the directors, if the manager falls into that, he falls into that. As long as the players go as well. Not every player, because then we get this weird argument. So you're saying get rid of 90% of the players in one transfer window? No, because that's not possible, that's not feasible. But it can't just be put a new manager in, it will be fixed. No, it's all got to be ripped down and started up again, and built back up properly, sustainably, with a long-term vision, a long-term future. But the Graham Potter stuff really worries me. It really does, because I just, you know, they sounded him out for Nice. And, you know, and they're like, well, he's in our back pocket, so we can come in at United. And I think that someone needs to really sit all of these people down. Jim Ratcliffe, Dave Brailsford, Jean-Claude Blanc, and all of those kind of people, and say that this is a different beast. This is a different animal. And look at the parallels. I understand that every situation isn't exactly the same. But Graham Potter was earmarked by Todd Boehly and Chelsea as the person to lead them for the next however many years, and to guide their project and build them up to success. Young players in. We're going to build a young core of players at Chelsea. We're going to spend £1 billion on all of these players. We've got to get players out as well. And yes, there's going to be some movement going above with directors, etc., etc., etc. But he's going to figure it out. The job swallowed him up. He was out of his depth for a variety of reasons, whether it was working with big players, whether it was working within the politics of that club, whether it was just the pressure of being in that seat. And yes, there were loads of players, and yes, they couldn't fit every player into the dressing room and all this kind of stuff. But Man United, if you think that was bad at Chelsea, Man United is another beast. It's another animal. It will chew you up and it will spit you out. It's done it with better coaches and better managers than Graham Potter. Just look. And look at the media, and look at the treatment, and all that kind of stuff. And if he thinks that, but it's part of the problem at Chelsea was just we had too many players. Part of the problem at Manchester United is a lot of those players aren't good enough. Part of the problem at Manchester United is that a lot of the facilities aren't fit for purpose. Part of the problem at Manchester United is still, what is the INEOS, the hybrid of INEOS, Jim Ratcliffe, and Glazer situation actually going to look like in practice? You know, what is that? And for all of that discussion that people throw at Erik ten Hag, what's he ever done? What's he ever done? Why is he at Manchester United? What's he ever done? What's he ever won? Yes, he got to a Champions League semi-final. Yes, he won the Eredivisie, those times with Ajax. You know, and yes, he set records at Ajax. Well, then Graham Potter's done even less than all that. He built up Brighton and he did well in Sweden. did all right at Swansea in the Championship. So that is, I mean, a monumental leap of faith to assume that that would work. Monumental. And if it's just a case of, well, we've got existing and good relationships with Graham Potter, so it's going to work out, that is so alarming for me. And there are better options out there, truly and genuinely there are. And it's really, really concerning because I just, I think there are fans that they want to see change. And I think these reports of the CEO going and the sporting directors coming in and even some of these early players that were linked with in the summer, there's a cautious optimism because we've seen it all before, haven't we? We've seen it all before and we know Man United and we know the media. So we sort of like, well, I'll wait and see how this plays out. But the moment you bring in Graham Potter, I do think there are going to be people that are just like, this could go horrifically badly. Horrifically badly. And I'm not saying that you should always be judged on your failures because just because it hasn't worked out one place doesn't mean it's not going to work out at another. There have been plenty of managers that have good managers that have gone to clubs and failed. Doesn't mean they're a bad coach or anything like that. It can just not be the right fit or the right moment. It can happen. But there is nothing for me that I look at Graham Potter and go, he's right for that Man United job. Nothing. He's a good coach. But you need more than that. Man United, like the coaching part of it's almost secondary, isn't it? How can you manage those players, those personalities, those politics above you? How can you manage the media? I mean, it got to the point with Sir Alex Ferguson, particularly in his later years, that his primary job was just managing the media. I mean, the coaching day-to-day on the training pitch was done by Reddy Mullerstein, was done by Carlos Queiroz, was done by Mike Phelan, was done by all of these different people. You know, because Sir Alex Ferguson was just kind of more of a sit back, manage the media, manage the players in terms of an overview, but the nitty-gritty ain't important. It's just not. That is not important at all. And I just think the Graham Potter stuff could just be a disaster waiting to happen. I really do. And that's just really, really concerning. Really, really worrying. So we'll see. But I do think that's the beginning of more stories like that regarding Graham Potter. It's the first, it's not the first. It's just one of several outlets really that are reporting sort of the same thing when it comes to that. And very concerning for me. Very, very concerning. Let's see what people in the chat are saying. By the way, we've got nearly 1,000 people watching. And we've got how many likes? 125 likes. Percentages are low. Percentages are low this morning. If you haven't already clicked the like button, particularly for the solo streams, you know what it's like. Sometimes you're just talking. So if you haven't already clicked the like button, it shares it out for everyone on the YouTube platform. It shares it out. It says, if you like this, you might like this. So click the like button, certainly. Let's see if we can get to... Well, to be honest, with nearly 1,000 people watching, only half of you have to click the like button, and that's boom, 500. You know, it's tremendous. Let's see what people are saying in the chat here at the moment. What we got here. Director of Football says, if the new structure see Potter as a good fit for their new project, I'm with it. It's not really to do too much about the manager with a good structure above, like Potter at Brighton. I mean, I get that. I understand that, but you know, then you get into the territory of, well, if it's all about having good structure, then you might as well keep Ten Hag. We've seen what happens with Ten Hag with good structure. Granted, as I've mentioned earlier on, the problem might be that there might be friction within that structure, and it might not be the right fit for it. But it's very concerning for me. What else are people saying here? Convict says Potter is not the man. He got no experience of managing a big club without disrespecting, but Swansea, Brighton and Chelsea is not the same as Manchester United. I certainly agree. You know, I do. And it'd be one thing if it really worked out at Chelsea, but I mean, horrifically badly. It's not as even if like he was there for like 2 or 3 years and it was just a case of, I got him to a certain level, but he couldn't get there. He was gone within a matter of months. Like it was infamously bad. That's how horrible it was there. Now, you could argue when it comes to it, well, look at Poch at the moment. It ain't going too great from Mauricio Pochettino either. He's basically found himself in the same position as Graham Potter, and that whole system there is set up to fail. So maybe it's just a case of, look, it's not going to really work out with anyone. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad coach, but it's just Not good. Tavislov says, we should always go for the best of the best. Potter is nowhere near. Just like the Ollie decision. I said it from the beginning. I was Ollie 100% out before it ever happened. I just want to see if there's anyone that's got like a positive. Chris says, I keep Ten Hag 10 days of the week before even thinking about that ass clown, Potter. I fear we have two of men in the past making decisions now. To be fair, I can't really see many positive Potter's decisions, to be honest. Yeah. Mortada says, if he couldn't handle the pressure of Chelsea with all the youngsters, imagine going to a beast like United. The players were eating for breakfast. Giles says, Potter was cooking at Brighton, also with Ashworth. He knows what he could do with United. That is certainly what some people are saying, isn't it, as well? They're saying that. And again, that's probably where the links come from, because it's logical, really, isn't it? It's logical that they might go after Graham Potter because they had chats with him in the summer when it came to the links about going to Nice. And then if you do bring in a Dan Ashworth, worked with him at Brighton, so they would seemingly be aligned and on the same page. So that might be, to INEOS, a perfect match when it comes to that. But I just think he'd be massively out of his depth when it came to it. And in the chat also, it's just Josh Media, graphics guru, visual ninja, with the eyeballs emoji, which sometimes usually means, hey, where are the likes at? You know, sometimes there ends up being a visit from Mr. Phelan, who isn't just Josh Media, graphics guru, visual ninja. It's different person, completely different person. But usually it means I'm looking at the likes, and the likes aren't liking. Avi with a super chat says, did you see Sir Dave Brailsford on Diary of a CEO? I'm optimistic. I haven't seen the whole interview, but I did see some clips of him chatting in there, talking about basically his just win at all costs mentality and how it makes him sort of embarrassed and feels a great deal of shame if he doesn't win. So I'll have to sit down and watch that at some point. But I've seen other interviews that he's done as well. And look, he's a very impressive person when it comes to his record in sport. You know, some things are dubious, to say the least. But he's a very impressive person when it comes to that in sport. I still have some reservations as to how that can translate over to football. I do think there are kind of universal truths when it comes to all sport, but there are differences as well, which kind of, like I said, does kind of concern me a little bit. But if you watch those interviews, it can be quite exciting stuff. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about Jaden Sancho, who reportedly has a verbal agreement when it comes to Borussia Dortmund. Now, when it comes to Jaden Sancho, it was reported by Florian Plettenberg yesterday that they're still not really sure if there's a option to buy for Jaden Sancho. That's not confirmed yet or anything like that. Currently, further details of the loan are still being negotiated and worked on, but all of the parties right now are aiming to finalise this deal quickly, according to Plettenberg. Of course, he's from Sky Sports in Germany, and it will allow Sancho, and this is what a lot of people are saying at the moment, in Germany in particular, whether it's Plettenberg, whether it's Patrick Berger, whether it's Sky Sports Germany, whether it's Sport Bild, whatever outlets you want to have a look at, they're all saying really the same thing, that Dortmund want Sancho in their winter training camp in Marbella very quickly. In fact, Sancho is waiting on the final agreement between the clubs to be done, and he's already got a verbal agreement with Dortmund in place. Now, The Athletic are also reporting that the key man in Jaden Sancho's loan move to Dortmund could be the head coach, Edin Terzic, who has already shown he can get the best out of Sancho, because there have been people saying this. I saw this on social media yesterday saying, why would Dortmund want to bring back someone that's got attitude issues, that's lazy and had all these problems previously? Because when those stories came out about Sancho, really just after the big blow-up with Erik ten Hag, it was during his time at Dortmund as well, which he was late and he had to be paired up with Erling Haaland, and one of the sort of assistants had to basically take Sancho to these team meetings to ensure he would be there on time, etc., etc., etc. But, as The Athletic point out, when Terzic was appointed the caretaker manager in December 2020, he instructed a couple of staff members to pay special attention to Sancho, making sure he was not late for meetings, and also ensured that the player would spend as much time as possible in close proximity to Erling Haaland, hoping the Norwegian's professionalism would rub off. Jaden Sancho's prospective loan move comes with minimal risk attached from Borussia Dortmund's point of view. Club sources say Sancho's heavily subsidised engagement will only cost them £2.6 million all in until May. Effectively makes him a one-way bet. So it's just hilarious. It's hilarious, really. When you look at that, the amount of money we spent on Jaden Sancho a couple of years ago, and it could have been more the year before, but we spent all that money on Jaden Sancho, highest paid player at the club, and he's going for a 6-month loan for £2.6 million. And the reason that is because of his wages, nobody will touch him unless we have to subsidise that move to make it happen. No one's interested in buying in January because of the amount that he's on, because of the amount that it would cost him. You know, he was linked to Juventus, but we'd have to pay all of his wages for him to go to Juventus. And it's another mess that Manchester United find themselves in. It's another just complete and total mess. All because of the manager. I actually saw the quote yesterday, once again, that Erik Ten Hag said about Jaden Sancho after that Arsenal game. And every time I read it, I say to myself, is that it? Is this really what people have twisted in their head as Jaden Sancho being thrown under the bus and being scapegoated and called out and boom, 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 boom in a public setting by Erik Ten Hag? Is that really it? Because I'm telling you now, and I think that people have got it sort of messed up in their heads, that something else was said about Jaden Sancho in that press conference, because I have seen a variation of that quote said by so many different managers this season at different clubs, and it hasn't led to this. Honestly, I've seen Pochettino say it about players at Chelsea. I've seen Pep say it about players at City, and then people push back, well, Pep wins titles. No, managers say that about players. When you're asked in a press conference, why didn't you pick this player? And you say, and I think Ten Hag, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was essentially, we've got lots of options at Manchester United. Based on the performances in training, we decided to pick the players that we went with today. And I don't know, I just think people have interpreted that as Sancho's a lazy so-and-so, he's a bum, he never shows up to work on time, he can't be asked, blah, blah, blah. And even if he said that, you'd be like, whoa, that's pretty severe. But he didn't. And on top of that, if you've got a problem with it, grit your teeth, you play, and then when the time comes, when January comes or when the summer comes, you leave. That's it. But so it's been so sort of just warped and twisted and all this kind of stuff. I just don't get it. I really don't get it. And I really don't understand that kind of thing. And I also don't understand is there were a bunch of people 18 months ago, 24 months ago, said we've got to end Player FC. Get rid of Player FC. Someone's got to come in here and they've got to tell these people to their face that they're not good enough, or they're not trying hard enough, or they're not putting the work in, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And then when it happens, they're going, get rid of the manager, bring the player back. It blows my mind when it comes to all of this, because I mentioned this yesterday and people reacted in the comments because there are some people that are staunchly, no, Erik Ten Hag's in the wrong, Jaden Sancho's done nothing wrong, he's in the right, he's been mistreated, etc., etc., etc. And they're like, no, Sancho needs to come back and Ten Hag needs to go. And my point is that even if Erik Ten Hag goes, which I've said I think at the end of the season he probably will, I still don't want Jaden Sancho back. The situation's done. You can't come back from that. You can't. What message, even if it's Ten Hag or if it's a new manager, if it's a new coach, what message does that send that you can fall out with the coach? You can just come back in. Yeah, you can just come back in afterwards over what is really a petty issue. A really petty issue. And it's not even about backing Ten Hag, because again, I've said I think he's probably going to end up getting the sack. And I'm not even totally opposed to that if it's the right person that comes in and if it's the right strategy and the right project. It's not even about taking sides about who's right or who's wrong. You just can't come back from that. It's about mentality and it's about sort of behaviour. Whether or not you believe or you don't believe all the stuff that's been written about Jaden Sancho, about turning up late and attitude and all that, park that by the side. It's just a toxic situation. You have to just move on. You can't allow that kind of situation, that kind of behavior where you have meetings to try and resolve it. No, you can apologize. You don't want to apologize. Well, that's really it. It's just about professionalism. It's about having a collective unit. And on top of that, was he really doing the business for Manchester United anyway? No. Now, again, people then start to get into reasons why they go, well, he's never given a run of games, never given this, never given that. It's not worked out. That's it. It hasn't worked out. Time to cut bait, time to move on. Really as simple as that. And as I mentioned earlier on, so people have tried to use these previous reports about, lack of professionalism or lateness or laziness and all that kind of stuff. And some of it I think is lazy journalism, really. I don't think all of it's true. Some of it has been a bit, because you've got to know the game when it comes to the media. Some of it has, been sides putting stuff out into the media to try and justify certain decisions. And so you have to read through it. Again, I go back to media literacy. That's what it's all about, trying to dissect what is actually true and what isn't true and what's lazy and what's probably accurate. But it's not difficult to see why he would want to go back to Dortmund, because the guy who's currently in charge there was the person who really got some of the best out of him. And I mentioned it yesterday. I said that Jaden Sancho, sometimes this is just the case with certain players in football and just in life. There are certain people that, to get the best out of them, they have to be, and I couldn't really find the best word for it yesterday, but they have to be nurtured and they have to be sort of, pampered, and they have to be protected. And sometimes at a big club like Manchester United, that's just not going to happen. Under certain managers, that just isn't going to happen. Now, you can criticise Ten Hag for man management skills. Maybe that is a flaw in his character when it comes to that. But he's going back to a club where it's worked out for him. And he's also going back to a manager who did just that. When he became the caretaker manager, he was like, right, to get the best out of Jaden, we have to make sure he turns up on time. And we have to make sure that, he's protected and he's, we wrap cotton wool around him. And that's what we're going to do. So he's going to go back to Dortmund. But that might mean that at United it's not going to work out. That might mean at a lot of clubs it's not going to work out. Because some managers and some environments just aren't like that. They're just not. So, again, this is the right move for him. It's just, the fact that all the money that's been spent and all the wages that he's on, it's £2.6 million all in until May, if that's accurate, is insane, really. And but it is what it is. And I think, to be fair, if you want to talk about Sancho and you want to talk about United maybe not looking after him, the whole thing last season when he took the time off was from a player welfare point of view, and was to try and get the best out of him and to try and treat him as best as they could, and that didn't work out either. So like I said before, it's a toxic situation. It's done. Move on. Even without Erik ten Hag being there, it's done. There's no way back. There can't be any way back, because what is a prerequisite of the new manager to come in? Oh, by the way, you're going to have to treat Jaden Sancho really nicely. And look, he's still got, his career ahead of him. He's still really young. That's the thing you kind of forget with Sancho too. He's still really young, so there's still time for it to turn around. And I hope he does. I hope he goes to Dortmund, and I hope it works out for him. And then he comes back and he gets a move somewhere else. But it's not worked out. It's easy and simple to say as that, isn't it? So I think when it comes to Jaden Sancho, realistically now we're just sort of waiting on, I think, a here we go from Fabrizio Romano, really. So we'll have to wait and see. What are people in the chat saying? This is what makes me laugh. So OHB says, Owen, I honestly believe you want Ten Hag out. And then if I just scroll up, I saw a second ago someone saying that Owen's always trying to give excuses for Erik ten Hag, which this is what I mean. You can't win with it. You say that Jaden Sancho needs to go. You're a disgrace. You're making excuses for Erik. There you go. Owen will do anything to give Ten Hag excuses. So this is what is nuts. With all this kind of stuff, you want Ten Hag to go. You want Ten Hag to stay. You need to wanting to get rid of him. It's so strange. I cannot understand it, because as I've said before, as I said this morning, I think that everyone needs to go, and I think Erik ten Hag is going to end up going. I think if you sort of sit here and you can confidently say that Erik ten Hag at the beginning of next season is going to be the Manchester United manager, then I would say, what makes you believe that with the way things are going at the moment, realistically? Why do you think that's the case? I want it to work out with a manager because I don't think he's a bad coach. I think like many good coaches that have come to United, it's failed him. It's absolutely failed him. But I think it's naive to assume that, don't worry, he'll be fine. I think he's still to the end of the season, and then I think there's a massive conversation about Erik ten Hag's future, and I think there will be. And I think the reports of them sort of informally sounding out managers is really concerning. But I also, as I've said, the reason I won't come on and be like, Erik ten Hag, get rid of him today, go, 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 is because everyone needs to go. It doesn't get fixed with just the manager. It doesn't. It's getting rid of everyone, CEO, sporting directors, everyone that's involved with recruitment, and a lot of these players too. And that doesn't happen overnight. You can hope that, a lot of them go in the summer. Hopefully there's a mass exodus. Maybe there won't be. It takes 2 or 3 transfer windows to get rid of a lot of these players. But a lot of them need to go. The wages needs to come down. The majority of them aren't good enough. I said, I'm not attached to anyone. I'm really not. I'm not attached to anyone at all. They can all go. But it's whether or not how quickly that can happen. Larry says, Owen, Erik ten Hag has previously shown in a structured system he can succeed. That's why I'd say he'll be here next year. Look, this is the thing. I agree with what you've said with that when you say that he can do well in a structured system. My only problem is as we spoke about earlier on, this structure he might not fit in. Because if those reports are accurate, that he still wants that strong of a veto, because it's in his contract. This is the thing. So if he wants that strong of a veto when it comes to transfers and recruitment, that might not work for those people that are in there, that come in, whether it's Dan Ashworth, whether it's Paul Mitchell, with Jean-Claude Blanc. They might say, no, we don't want that. We don't want you to have that. So, and Erik ten Hag's got 18 months left on his contract. So it might become a situation of, look, okay, Erik, do you think you can work in this system, this structure? If you can, we'll give you a new deal. And we'll say, right, Erik ten Hag, you're the long-term manager for the project. Boom. But in this new deal, you're not going to have the same terms that you had before. Erik ten Hag might be like, no, I'm not interested in that. I want to have that strong veto power that I've had before. They might say, no, there's friction, boom. So just because you've worked well in a structure previously, that doesn't mean it's going to work well in this structure. That was the Ajax structure, where everything was aligned. They still have to be completely aligned on the situation. The last thing Man United need as well is more internal bickering and politics going on as well. That's the key aspect of this. So I agree with you. Ten Hag has worked well in the structure, and he would work well in a structure that suits him at Manchester United, with people above him that are competent, but they all have to be aligned as well. That's the situation too. So, like I said, I still think Ten Hag will last to the end of the season. I think results will dictate it. If Manchester United can turn things around, if Manchester United, we're going to get into players coming back in just a second. Those players coming back, if United start picking up some results and going, that might change things at the moment. But right now, if the season ended tomorrow, then I think he would be in big trouble, honestly. But there's still plenty of time to go, in all honesty as well. Let's move on and let's talk about Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because Aaron Wan-Bissaka has had an extension triggered on his contract. Now, we know that Aaron Wan-Bissaka's contract was originally set to expire at the end of the season, but according to Chris Wheeler and Matt Hughes from the Daily Mail, they have extended his contract by 12 months. They are planning to open up talks over a new deal before the end of the season. So now his contract expires at the end of June in 2025 as opposed to this year in 2024. It still feels strange to me, by the way, to keep saying that it is 2024. I'm still in that territory where I keep thinking that it's 2023. I had that the other day. Someone said, by this date, I saw 2024, and I went, oh yeah, it's a new year. I forgot about that. So there was all of these talks, wasn't there, about certain players and their contracts being extended, this, that, and the other. Obviously, we've seen that Victor Lindelof had his extension triggered. Players that are on higher wages, Rafael Varane, 340k a week, Anthony Martial, 250k a week. They haven't had their contracts extended. They haven't had those options triggered, rather. So they're free to talk to European clubs right now, and obviously they'll be out of contract to the end of the season. It has been reported when it comes to Varane that United are and do want to open up new talks with him, but they just want him to take a lower wage. They don't think his 340k a week can justify his absences from the side, or is lack of consistency because of injuries, etc. Anthony Martial's just going to go at the end of the season. I think that's pretty much obvious. There was some debate, wasn't there, about Wan-Bissaka and Hannibal and some other players about if not they were going to get their options triggered. I'm not surprised by this, realistically. I think the interesting part is really the second part, where they say they are planning to open talks over a new deal before the end of the season. That's really the thing that worries me. I look at the right-back position in general, and Wan-Bissaka's the better defender. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's a better defender than Diogo Dalot. And we find ourselves in this really weird situation often, don't we, with right-back, where on certain games we go, right, Wan-Bissaka should play because he's better one-on-one and he's better in terms of recovery and all that kind of stuff. Diogo Dalot might be a more complete right-back. But to be honest with you, none of them are still at that level that you need to be if you really want to consistently win stuff. They're not. We can do better. Now, I was an advocate of triggering Aaron Wan-Bissaka's extension because I still think probably on both of them we need to cash in. Diogo Dalot signed a long-term contract, which is somewhat alarming, to be honest with you. Because if I'd rather have a backup right back, I'd honestly rather it be Wan-Bissaka. Just for the case of, you would hope there would be this right back that plays consistently, that is a high quality level, that is excellent going forward, is good defensively as well. And then if certain games dictate it, or if they drop out the side, Wan-Bissaka comes in, does defensively. I suppose when it comes to Dalot, you could say versatility. That's what he has over Wan-Bissaka. He can play left back, he can play right back. He could probably play centre back as well. Probably not great, but he could probably do that. So that's maybe something that Dalot does have over Wan-Bissaka, in fairness, and I suppose age. But both of them aren't at the level that they're at, to be honest. Both of them aren't at the level that Manchester United need. And I mentioned yesterday about the links to Elise, and was saying, well, we know because it was reported quite heavily over the last sort of 12 months or so, in times when Wan-Bissaka hasn't been featured in the side, that Crystal Palace retain an interest in bringing him back. So why not? So why not have him be involved? Certainly, why not have him be involved in a possible deal to bring Elise back? If you could get that fee down, if a good recruitment specialist could get that involved, why not? So possibly you could see a situation where that happens. I don't know. Maybe that's somewhat lazy journalism. I tell you what is quite actually lazy journalism, by the way, is this weird comparison with Elise yesterday of saying, it didn't work out with Wilfried Zaha at Manchester United, so why is it going to work out with Elise? What's that got to do with anything? What? Because they both came from Crystal Palace. If Elise came from, pick another club, Wolves, would they be having those Zaha comparisons? No. I mean, talk about really, really lazy stuff and really bad stuff. It's just shit. I mean, it was honestly one of the weirdest narratives that I saw. Yes, Man United shouldn't go in for Elise. Why? It didn't work out with Wilfried Zaha back in 2012, 2013, a decade ago, with another player that happened to come from Crystal Palace. Paris. What? What? So, yeah. Didn't get that yesterday, and sometimes that's just one of those ones which you properly, roll your eyes at social media and go, okay, good. Super chat from All Elite says, I'm not mad about him having a veto. Managers should have the final say. What I want is synergy between him and the recruitment team, so he doesn't need to veto. I think also as well, the important thing when it comes to Ten Hag, going back to that briefly too, is that if Ten Hag wants a certain player, let's say an Anthony. Anthony's always the example, isn't it? I want Anthony. The people in the recruitment team should have their, due diligence and have their wits about them to say, I know you really want him and I know you really believe in him, but Eric, he's not it. And on top of that, they want £85 million. Like, no way. No way. Because they always say that too. I mean, Ten Hag said that in the press conferences, hasn't he? I've got a veto, John's got a veto, and John Murtough. So why did no one veto that? Why did no one go, it's 85 million quid? And I'll tell you why. Because they were desperate, because they were scared. They had that start to the season where they lost against Brighton and lost against Brentford, and they just completely panicked. They just completely were terrified. They went, "Oh, get Anthony in. We need someone on the right hand side." Did no one think to exercise their veto power for 85 million quid? You know, I mean, my goodness me, terrible. Scar's chosen spokesperson with the super chat says Aaron Ramsackett's the best right back in the league. He can pocket anyone. We've gone down the road of doubting him before. This is the hair situation all over again. Respectfully, Scar's chosen spokesperson. Look, everyone's got their opinion. And I'm not going to put anyone down for having their opinion or anything like that. And appreciate the contribution. Respectfully, massively disagree. Massively disagree. Yeah, he's not. He's not even the best right back. Wow. You know, there's a reason why there's talks of him playing for Democratic Republic of Congo, because there's like 3 right backs that are better for him for England. And you're not even the best right back in the city of Manchester. Kyle Walker's better than him. So he's a good defender, but I don't think this is also something that, you know, us United fans, I think, need to do. And we're just as guilty as this when it comes to the club, by the way, is that we do overhype our players a lot. We do. We say that this person's the best player in the league, or this player's amazing, and you go, actually, no, they're average. They're average. Aaron Bissaka's a really good defender. He is. But also sometimes the evidence of a player's quality is where they end up going after United and how it works out for them. Wan-Bissaka would probably, like I said, probably go back to Palace. He's been linked there, or he'd go to like a mid-table Premier League side. He's a good Premier League right back. He is. But if you're gonna like really compete for titles, European trophies, he's not. He's a good defender, but not the best right back in the league, certainly. A couple of other bits and updates as well. First of all, Andre Onana. There'd been so much speculation out there about Onana and what was going to happen with him and AFCON. Well, he is going to play in AFCON, and this is the resolution that's been sorted out between Cameroon and Manchester United. So, Andre Onana will travel to AFCON straight after Manchester United's match with Tottenham Hotspur on January 14, thanks to an amicable agreement being reached by all parties. This came from David Ornstein yesterday. In fact, Cameroon then play 24 hours later on the 15th in their first game of AFCON. I don't get this. I really, really don't. I'd get it if Andre Onana was the most amazing season and was so indispensable to us and everything. But if I was Buendia, and I've seen a lot of people saying this, I would really be sitting there thinking, what am I here for? And I'd be interested to know what conversations that he had with United and with Ten Hag when he came in the summer about game time. Was he just told, you're just going to play in the Carabao Cup or anything like that? And then he didn't, by the way. But if we get in certain cup matches, you're going to be involved then? Was that what he was told? Because there has been this just like sheer desperation to keep Andre Onana in the net. Some have speculated it's from like Onana's desire to like, if I play a load of games at AFCON, I might lose my spot at Manchester United. I don't know. But it's so odd, isn't it? It's such a strange situation, this desperation to keep him around, to the point that if I was Cameroon too, I'd be well pissed off. Why wouldn't you be? You'd be like, seriously, we've selected you, and you're like, no, I want to play this club game first, and you know, I want to 24 hours later. How can you got to travel thousands of miles, thousands of miles to go and play in AFCON? It's just I don't get it. I really don't. If I was Buendia, how can you not feel slighted by that? You know, okay, right, he's going to go, so I'm going to play these games in January. No, we're doing everything to keep him here. Am I that bad? Is that what you're saying? And maybe he is. We'll have to wait and see, but we don't know. We genuinely don't know. Maybe it is because Buendia is so horrifically bad that when we see him, he'll probably play against Wigan, right? No, he won't, because Onana will be available for that. He's not going to play. It depends, I suppose, how far, or even in Cameroon, we only got 2 games in January. I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand. It is a really bizarre situation. I get that his situation in general with Cameroon is just bizarre, but what a odd circumstance. What a really, really odd circumstance. Maybe it's just United just thinking that, well, look, he's going to play against Wigan. If we can keep him against Spurs, then he's going to go off play AFCON and we won't miss him because by the time that's all done, he can come back and he won't miss any games. So maybe they're just really desperate to keep him for that one game so he doesn't miss any games at all. I don't know. But yeah, it's an odd situation. And if I was buying Deer, I'd just be like, oh, then I'll just go because I'm not going to play. Unless he's just really content to sit on the bench, maybe. I'm not sure. But a very, very, very strange situation to say the least. And finally, yesterday, Manchester United announced that Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez are back in full training for Manchester United. This really goes along with the timeline that was put out there anyway by Erik ten Hag before Christmas, or really early December actually, saying that he expected Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez to be back, or available for him rather, in mid-January. And it does look like that the game that they're hoping for them to be back for is that Spurs game. So realistically, because they're not going to play against Wigan this coming Monday in the FA Cup, that I'd be very surprised if they were in the squad. But considering both of them have been off with long-term injuries. So they're back in full training. We have seen that Mason Mount was back on. There was a picture of him back on the grass. What was it, like a week ago or something like that? I think it was. So he's on the way back. They're saying that Terrell Malacia is going to be back soon, although this sort of thing yesterday didn't include Mount or Malacia. But Lisandro Martinez and Casemiro being back, of course, it's massive. And this has been the whole thing with United this season, isn't it? Is that, of course, when our best players are back and available, you would think United are going to be playing better. Because they should. That's only logical. In fairness, I think I'm more excited for Martinez than Casemiro, in all honesty, because we did see Casemiro at points this season and he struggled. Like, he did. He was, at a point in time, he almost had the Scott McTominay situation where he was our top goal scorer for a period, wasn't he, Casemiro? And people were like, he's got to sit out because he's struggling. But some people are saying look, anyone would struggle in his position because he's got to cover so much room. It's not a case of his legs have gone. It's just a case of the system failing him. Although some people are adamant, no, his legs have gone. He's on the decline. You can see the drop off. It's not working out for him. United need to cut bait. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when he comes back because we've seen him this season and we've seen him struggle. The positive one is Martinez, because we haven't, even though Martinez has played this season, I mean, I was saying it at the time, and I was proven to be correct on this. You just watched Martinez play. He was not right. You could just see it. You could see it in how he was playing, and then particularly, there was a couple of instances where he came off. Like he came off. He was substituted in the games, and then they asked him, "Oh, is he injured?" No, he's not injured. And then he played the next game. You go, "Well, that's weird. That implies that something's going on." And then even that game, it was the game against Arsenal, wasn't it, where he got substituted, he got taken off, and then he went to Argentina, and he was with the Argentina squad, and they were like, "No, he's not hurt, he's in training." And then he didn't participate in any of the international matches, and it was like, there's something really odd going on with Martinez. And you could clearly see that the operation that he'd had on his foot, it wasn't right. He wasn't right. So here's hoping now we get the old Martinez back. This time, there's nothing wrong with him. This time, it's fixed. Clearly, they've taken their time with him this time around. So he's going to be a massive addition because we didn't have Martinez back earlier on this season. And this problem, I mean, he had the initial surgery. When was that? Was it April? Beginning of May? I think it was April, wasn't it, against Sevilla? So that's like, 9 months? He's been dealing with this foot injury for us a long, long, long time. So maybe he doesn't come back in immediately. Maybe they decide to ease him in. But he's back in full training now, and I guess it's the game against Spurs. Maybe that's the one he's earmarked back for. Maybe that would be too soon. I don't know. But that's a massive addition. And look, a team that's got Martinez and Casemiro in certainly is going to be stronger. So hopefully it helps things out. But there you go, guys. That's the transfer view for you this morning. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. How many likes did we end up on? Not even 300. Oh, not even 300 likes, eh? We've still got 1,000 people watching. I say there is no reason why we can't get to 400. 100 of you right now can click the like button. I believe in you. I believe that 100 of you can click the like button. How many subscribers are we on as well? We're on 159,000, less than 500 to go to 160,000 as well. So yes, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. You know what to do, all that fun stuff. A reminder, we are going into a weekend of FA Cup action. United actually play on the Monday against Wigan. So our game doesn't happen until the Monday. With that, you're going to have a special Trinity match for you, I believe. I believe it's going to be Flex, KG, and myself. Oh, yeah. Exciting stuff. I know. I can hear the cheers. I can hear the cheers. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, of course, there's going to be all the build up to that. It's going to be press conferences, previews, all that fun stuff. And look, it's a cup competition. So who knows? Who knows? I mean, we got to the final last year. We've got standards to uphold. Whenever you play those sort of smaller teams, it always makes you worried, though, doesn't it? It always makes you a bit concerned and worried. It's a banana skin game, certainly. Anyway, guys, have a great Thursday, and I'll speak to you again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.